This conference will now be recorded.
Right. Right, let's start. So today we'll start with internal tables. Internal tables. Right. So last two sessions we have discussed about structures. Okay, structures, and we understood that a structure is a collection of what different types of fields. Internal table also is a collection of what different types of fields. But internal table deals with what multiple records. Internal table can deal with multiple records, whereas structure can hold only what single record. So if you observe this, the purpose of internal table is, as usual, if you take a database server here, database server will have what n number of database tables. Okay, database server will have n number of database tables. As part of this database tables, huge amount of data would be stored. Now, what is the requirement generally? We need to develop the reports which has to read the data from those tables. It has to read the data from those tables, and based on the data, we need to generate the reports. Okay, based on that particular data, we need to generate the reports. Okay, so when I execute this ABAP program, okay, when I execute the ABAP program, uh, what should happen? An internal table should be created. Okay, internal table should be created, and in that internal table is what temporary table, whereas if you take database table, it is permanent. Database table will reside in database server, whereas internal table will reside in what application server. Okay, internal table gets created during program execution. Once a program execution once a program execution is what finished once a program execution is finished, the memory allocated for the internal table will be destroyed. The memory allocated for the internal will be destroyed. Am I clear? So what you will do in this internal table, you can observe here, will when you execute the program, internal table should get created. Okay, and I have to send the request. See the steps here. First step is the moment you execute the program, internal table will be created in the runtime. Okay, internal table also is a collection of what fields. So second step is what we are going to send the request to the database for retrieving the data. For retrieving the data, we are going to send the request to the database. I may retrieve the data from one table or what multiple tables. Whatever the retrieved data is there, that retrieved data will come and sit in what internal table. Once the data is stored in the internal table, we will process this data. We may add some additional data, we may update the data, we may delete the data, we may do some calculations on the data. So that processed data either will update it back to database, or that processed data we will display it to the user in the form of what report. Am I clear? So this is the purpose of what internal tables. We use internal tables for retrieving the data from what? For storing the data retrieved from what? Database tables. Okay. So once the data is stored in the internal table, you will process the data. What are the calculations you want to do? That calculations you will do it on the internal table data, and that processed data we will update it back to what database, or will display to the user in the form of what report. And what is the lifetime of this internal table? It is temporary. It is available only during the program execution. Once a program execution is finished, the memory allocated for the internal table will be destroyed. It is only temporary. So before it get destroyed, we have to update it either back to the database, or will display it to the user in the form of a report. A report is nothing but what? A summary of data. By looking at that report, we should able to analyze something. Okay, so this is the overall requirement. This is the overall purpose of what? Internal tables. Any questions from this slide? Let us see. So as of now, we don't know how to communicate with the database. So we need to wait for a few more days to interact with the database. So what we'll do till that time is, we will prepare the data in the internal table manually. Okay, generally the data in the internal table will be retrieved from what? Database. But at this stage, we don't know how to communicate with the database server. That is the reason we will see the statements related to what? Internal tables. How to create, how to fill the data, how to delete the data, how to modify the data, how to read a specific record, how to sort the data, how to copy the data from one internal table to another internal table. All those operations we'll discuss. After that, we'll see how to communicate with the database. Okay, let's see that again. Just like in the last two sessions, we have seen multiple ways of creating the structure. Internal table also can be created in what? Multiple ways. First, let me directly start with the standard way, which is followed in most of the projects. There are some other old syntaxes also that we'll discuss later on during the course. First, we'll focus on what? Standard way, which is the recommended way, which is followed in most of the projects. Okay, so let's see that. So I'll go to ABAP editor, SC38. Might be I need to re-log in. Yeah. So let me open the last example. In the last example, I believe we have seen the standard way of declaring the structure. Okay, so I'll go to Z830. What is the last program? Something Z830 program. What? Yeah, 24, I think. Yeah, 24, 25 is the last example. So if you see the 24th example, what is the standard way of creating the structure? First, we need to analyze what are the fields we require in the structure. Okay. So first we need to analyze what are the fields we require in the structure. So what we have done here, we have created the type structure with the required fields. And we already know that whatever you declare by using types keyword will not allocate any memory. Types keyword will not allocate any memory. It only provides a template of the structure. So once a template is available, what we have done, we have created n number of structures, n number of work areas. We call them as work area, line type, row type, whatever it is. Okay, we create the work area, and we know that work area can store only single record at any point of time. If you try to store the second record, the previous record will be automatically overwritten. Similarly, now we are discussing what? Internal tables. So for declaring the internal table also, we need to visualize the fields. We need to understand what are the fields we want. What is the sequence of the fields you want to declare? What are the data type of the fields? All those things we have to analyze, and based on that you have to declare. So generally these fields we will declare depending on the uh, table we are trying to access. So from the database server, we'll try to access some database table. So based on the fields we are trying to retrieve, that particular fields will declare it in the internal table. But at this stage, we don't know how to interact with the database. So what I'll do is I'll take a very simple internal table. Assume that the internal table has to store some employee data. So what I'll do, I'll declare one types structure, just like in the previous approach. I'll create the types structure with the required fields. So let me declare it here. 26. Standard syntax for declaring what? Internal table. Standard syntax for declaring the internal table. Right. Type of program is executable program. Let us save it in the local objects. Right. So what is the first thing you have to do? Before you declare the internal table, we have to analyze what are the fields you want to declare. Let us declare some three fields like employee number, employee name, employee designation. Let us declare employee number as integer and employee name and employee designation as what? Character. So first thing is we have to create the template. How do you create the template? We'll say types keyword, types begin off, types begin off. You can give any name. As I told you in the last class, the types declaration generally you'll start with what? ty underscore. So types begin off ty underscore emp. Any name you can give. I'll give it as ty underscore emp. Let us declare with three fields. Employee number type I. I'll declare another field. Employee name of 20 type C. One more field. Employee designation of something 20 type C. End of what? ty underscore emp. So I created what? The template of my structure. What are the fields you want in the internal table? That fields template I declared in the types structure by using the types keyword, and we know types keyword will not allocate any memory. It only provides a template. Based on this template, let us create the internal table. So also data. In some projects, internal table names they'll start with itab. In some project they may start with it. In some project they may start with the t underscore. Like that, project to project you will have different coding standard. So let me follow my own standard, which is followed in most of the project. So I'll say data, okay, t underscore emp. Okay, I can give any name. I can give any name. Let me give it as t underscore emp1. Okay, yeah, we have to declare the internal table. So I'll say type table of. An internal table can be created either with header or without header. I repeat once again, an internal table can be created either with header or without header. Understood? It is always recommended to work with the internal to create the internal tables without header. Okay, I can create with header also, but when you come to object oriented, in some scenarios, with header is not supported. So always it is recommended to declare the internal tables without header. But just for understanding the difference, we'll declare two internal tables. Once the types structure is available, based on the types structure, I can create any number of internal tables, any number of work areas. So let me create two internal tables. One internal table with default header, another internal table without any header. So I'll say type table of. Wherever you see table now onwards, you have to understand that is an internal table. So type table of. What is the types structure? ty underscore emp. Type table of ty underscore emp. I will say with header line. With header line. Then I'll declare another internal table t underscore emp2. Type table of ty underscore emp. So what I did here, for the second internal table, I'm not using the addition with header line. So it is understood as what? Without what? Default header. Without default header. This is understood as what? With default header. Let me give the comment. With what? Default header. Save it. Check for the syntax. I don't have any errors. So what happens now? Two internal tables gets what? Created. One is with default header, another is what? Without header. So something like this. This is your first internal table you assume, which is what? With default header. With a default header. This is, yeah, this I'll put it as, okay. This I'll put it as default header, and this is another internal table which is having without header. Okay, so since this is the first example, I'll go a little slow. Almost in every requirement, we will use internal tables and work areas. Okay, so this is the important concept. Try to focus on the concept. So this is our body area. This body can store what? Any number of records. Okay, this is also internal table which has got only the body area. This is employee number. This is employee name and employee designation. Okay, so this is your what? Header. This is your default header. Okay, and this is your internal table or the first internal table. What is this? T underscore emp1. This is second internal table which doesn't have any header. So what are the fields here? Employee number, employee name, and employee designation. You understand header is like a work area. Whatever we have created in the last two sessions, header is like a structure, a work area. So you'll have some default values here. Employee number is integer, na? 0. Employee name is space. Employee designation is also character, na? Space. So you'll have the default value in the header area. Header means what? Like a structure, like a work area, which can store only single record. So you'll have the default values there. Done. Okay, so I declare the internal table with header, and that is what without the default header. Now what is our agenda? According to this slide, we are retrieving the data from the database server and we are putting it in what? Internal table. Okay, but here in this case, we don't know how to communicate with the database. So let us fill the internal table manually. Let us focus on the first internal table, which is with header, default header. I don't have any statement which will directly store the data in the body area. If you are retrieving it from the database, that retrieved data can be stored directly in the body. But when you are filling it manually, I cannot directly assign the data to the body area. First of all, you have to assign the required data to the header. From header, you have to copy it to what? Body area. Am I clear? So what I have to do? I have to put the data in the header. Then I have to make a copy of that, put it in the body area. So what I'll do is let us focus on filling the first internal table. Okay, so as a recommendation, before we store any new record, new data, you clear the old data. So I'll say clear T underscore emp1. T underscore emp1 is an internal table. Na? How can you say that is an internal table? Wherever we use table keyword, you have to understand that is an internal table. So when I say clear followed by internal table, since my internal table is with a default header, since I said with header line which contains the default header, this clears what? This clears what? Header part. Do we have any data in the header? No, no. We are having only the default data, that is zeros and space. So nothing is there to clear. So nothing gets cleared. Done. So as a practice, I am clearing it. Now let me assign the data. How do we access the structure fields? Structure name hyphen field name. So header is like a structure only. So I'll say T underscore emp1 hyphen employee number equal to, I'll store some data. T underscore emp1 hyphen employee name equal to so and so. T underscore emp1 hyphen employee designation equal to, I'll say manager. So what you are doing here, we are assigning some data to the header. Okay, this always refers to header. So what happens here, the default values we have cleared it anyhow. So this would be what, 8 Raju and what manager. So let me assign it here. This is 8, right? 8 Raju and what, something manager. So the data is assigned to what? Header. What are the assignment you have done here? what are the assignment you have done, that will be assigned to the header area. From header, you have to copy it to the body area. There are multiple ways of doing it. First, let me use a statement called as append. Append t underscore emp1. Append t underscore emp1. What this append statement will do? Append statement will copy the data from the header to the end of the internal table. At this stage, my internal table is blank, na? Doesn't have any data. So this itself is nothing what? Begin and what? End. Understood? This itself is nothing but what? Begin and what? End. Okay, so what the append statement will do? It will copy the data to the end of the internal table. Means it will not remove it from the header. It makes a copy of that and copies it to the end of the internal table. So this is nothing but begin and end at this stage. So this would be 8. What is this? This is Raju and this is manager. 8 Raju and manager. So what we are trying to do here? We are trying to append the data from the default header to the end of the internal table. So this is your what? Append statement. So what we are doing here, we are saying append. What is that? T underscore emp1. Append statement will copy the data from header to the end of the internal table. The index of the internal table always starts from 1. If you remember last week somewhere, we understood that the index of the string starts from 0. Means the first character position in the string will start from its 0th position. Here, the index of the internal table starts from 1. So this should be 1. This is position 3, 4, 5 like this. The index of the internal table starts from 1. So append statement, what it will do? It will copy the data from the default header to the end of the internal table. Repeat this process for multiple records. So I'll say clear again what? T underscore emp1. Clear T underscore emp1. What this clear will do? It will clear the data in the default header. So what is the current data in the header? 8 Raju manager. So this should be cleared. It will set back to the default values. What is that? 0 space and space, whatever it is. Let me assign one more record. So here I'll say I'm assigning one more record. Let me assign something 5. Okay, 5 Vamshi and what? Employee. So what happens here? This record is assigned to what? Header. The assignment is always done at the header. 5. What is this? Vamshi. And what is the designation? I guess something employer. Employee. So 5 Vamshi and employee. This 5 Vamshi employee should be appended to the end of the internal table. So what this append statement will do, it copies the data to the end of the internal table. So one more time I am using append. It will copy the data to the end. End means after the first record, this is nothing but the end. So it will copy to the second position in the internal table. Append will always point to the end of the internal table. So it might have appended. Like this, let me repeat this process for multiple records. Okay, so here I'll say something what 50, I'll say something 19. This I'll say something current. This I'll say something manager. Okay, this I'll say something 12. This I'll say Srinivas. I'll add one more record 14. Ashok. This also something supervisor, something. So like this, n number of records I can append from what? Header to what? Body. So whenever you do the assignment will always be done at what? Header record. So what is the next record I have added there after 5 Vamshi employee? Clear T underscore emp1 means clear will clear the header part only. It clears this 5 so and so. It will set it back to our default value. 0 space and space would be there internally. What you are doing here, we are assigning what? 19 Karan and what? Manager. 19 Karan and manager. So the record would be assigned here. Something what? Sorry, 19 Karan and what? Something manager. Manager. 19 Karan and manager is assigned to the header part. Okay. Then from there we are appending it to what? internal table. Append will always point to the end of the internal table. So the record would be appended there. Done. 19 current manager. Done. Next, what we are doing here, we are assigning 12 Srinivas employees. So when I say clear, it will clear the header, and 12 Srinivas manager, 12 Srinivas employee will be assigned to the header. Append will copy it to the body. Like that, the chain will proceed. So 12 Srinivas employee. No? So this is 12 what Srinivas, and this is what employee. What is the final record I have appended? Something what 14 Ashok and what supervisor. So this is 14 Ashok and something what supervisor. Like this, what is the process of filling the internal table? Assign the data to the header. First assign the data to the header. So clear statement will clear the header part. What is the record assigned here? I said what 12 Srinivas and what employer. So this is 12 Srinivas and something employee. We have appended that to what body. Again, after this, let me put it like this. So like this, append will always point to the end of the internal table. So record by record, we have to append. If you want 1 lakh records, yes, 1 lakh times we have to assign that each record to the work area. From work area, we have to append it to the end of the internal table. But generally, we will fill the internal table with the data retrieved from what? Database. But at this stage, we don't know how to retrieve. That is the reason we are filling it what? Manually. So what is the final record here? 14 Ashok and what? Supervisor. 14 the header. The final record assigned is what? 14 what? Ashok. And this is something supervisor. Supervisor. Again, we are appending this. No? Let me append. Already appended, right? Okay, done. So append statement will copy the data from header to the end of the internal table. So what is the meaning here at this stage? When I say internal table, I am referring to the body of the internal table. Body can store multiple records. Header is like a work area which can store only single record. What is the current record in the header? 14 Ashok supervisor. How many records are there in the internal table? I mean body, 5 records are there. So this is the way to fill your internal table. Okay, I got the data in, I filled the data into the first internal table, which is created with the default data. Forget about the second one. Done. Now for our understanding, let me try to print the data, right? I'll say T underscore EMP1 hyphen employee number, T underscore EMP1 hyphen employee name, T underscore EMP1 hyphen employee designation. So I'm using write statement on my internal table. So this is the internal table with the default header. Na? It is an internal table with the default header. So it always refers to the header area. What is the current record in the header? Current record in the header is what? 14 Ashok supervisor. Na? So when I print it, I should get the 14 Ashok. So I'll just say data in what? Default header. Data in default header. I'm just trying to print it. Format color. What? Okay, so when I execute this, check for the syntax error, no errors. When I say F8, yes, see the output here. Yeah, I got the data. What is that I got? Data in the default header what? 14 Ashok and what? Supervisor. Understood? So what is the point you have to understand? When you use a write statement on the internal table, it always refers to the default header. Does this internal table contains any default header? Yes, we are having. What is the last record stored in the header? Default header 14 Ashok and what? Supervisor. So that's what the output I got. That's what the output I got. Now I want to display the data from the body. Okay, from the body. So I'll say data in T underscore, for your understanding, data in T underscore EMP1 body. Data in internal table T underscore EMP1 body. Right. So I don't know how many records are there in the internal table. I may have 0 records. I may have 0 record, 1 record, or 1 lakh records. We don't know. My expectation is what? I want to display it from first record to last record. First record to last record. So already we have seen some looping statements. While, end while, do, end do. If you want to execute certain statements repeatedly, that statements will keep it in the looping statement. Similarly, just like while, end while, do, end do, we have loop, end loop. So I'll say loop at t underscore emp1, loop at t underscore emp1. Okay, so here I'll say loop at t underscore emp1 and I'll say end loop. Okay, so let's see whether I'll get the data or not. So when I execute this, no errors. Yes, I got the data in the inter body. How many records I got? I got all the 5 records, 8, 5, 19, 12, and what? 14. So what this loop statement will do? Loop statement will always will always refer to the body. It will start from the first record. It will start populating from the first record. It will start populating from the first record. Means cursor will be here. It will try to populate that record. So where it will populate means it copies. It will reverse of append. It will copy that record from what? Body to what? Header. So what is the first record in the body? Yes, what is the first record? 8 Raju manager. So that record will be populated here. Means header can store only one record now. So this will be automatically overwritten with what record? 8 Raju and what? Something manager. So 8, what will be happening here? Raju and then what? Manager. 8 Raju and what? Manager. So record is successfully populated, successfully copied from body to header. Na? Since it is successfully populated, it will enter the loop. I'm using the right statement. Already I told right statement always refers to the header. What is the current record in the header? Current record in the header is what? Something 8 Raju and what? Manager. It gets displayed. Since it is loop, end loop is a looping statement, automatically cursor goes to second record. Okay, automatically cursor goes to second record. Now it will try to populate the second record from the body to the header. What is the second record here? 5 Vamshi and what? Employee. Na? So that record would be copied to the header. So the previous record in the header would be overwritten. What is the current record now? 5 Vamshi and what? Employer. So this would be something 5 Vamshi and what? Employee. 5 Vamshi and employee. Successfully copied from body to header. Na? So it will enter the loop. To enter the loop, again we are using right statement. What is the current record in the header? 5. So Vamshi and employee, it will print it. Again loop and loop means again cursor goes to what? Third record. So like this, how many times this gets iterated depending on the number of records in the body. If here in this case 5 records are there, so 5 times it will be iterating this particular loop and what? End loop. So the number of times iteration depends upon the number of records. Once all the 5 records are populated one by one, when there are no further records to iterate, when there are no further records to loop statement will fail. When the loop statement is failed, come out of it will not enter the loop. That's all. That's what is happening here. So when I execute, yes, I got all the records from the body. Let me debug this first. Then if you have any questions, you can ask me. First, let me debug. So what is the standard way of declaring the internal table? First, you have to analyze the fields that you want to declare. Okay, so I want some 3 fields. So create the template of those fields by using what? Types structure. Okay, once you create the template of the fields by using the type structure, using the templates, I can create what? N number of internal tables, N number of work areas. So anyhow, I cannot debug this because they come under what? Variable declaration. So I'll put the breakpoint directly on the 12th line. 12th line, execute this. Right, so observe this carefully. We have 2 internal tables in the program. One is T underscore EMP1, T underscore EMP2. What is the difference between these two at this stage? Internal table EMP1 is created with a default header. EMP2 is created without any header. So if you see T underscore EMP1, observe this carefully. It is showing the cap symbol here, which indicates what? It is an internal table with the default header. Okay, so if you see the body of the internal table here, this symbol indicates body. It is showing 0 here. 0 means what? At this stage, it doesn't have any records. How many fields are there? 3 fields. This internal table is created based on which structure? ty underscore emp, which has got 3 fields. Huh? So this one. So if I click on this symbol, body symbol, internal table, if I click on this, it has taken the control to tables tab. Tables tab, nothing but internal table. Do you have any data in the body at this stage? No. Initially my internal table is blank, doesn't have any data, 0 records are there. But I told header will have the default data. Na? How do you check it? If you see this, if I click on this, or yeah, if I click on that t underscore emp, t underscore emp1, it has taken that to structures, nothing but header. You will have the default data na 0 space and what? Space. Okay, done. So internal table is blank now. Header has got the default data. Fine. Now what is the procedure for filling your internal table? First you assign the data to the header, and from header you have to copy it to the body. At this stage we don't know how to directly put it in the body. So the only way of filling the internal table manual is first assign the data to the header, in this case default header. From there copy it to the body. So if you see the header data now, if I double click on this, employee number is 0 at this stage, employee name is space. Okay, employee designation is also what? Space. I am clearing here. There is nothing to clear in the header. Nothing is there in the header to clear. So nothing gets happened here. Done. Still I'm having the default data. Yeah. I'm assigning this to what? 8 Raju manager. So this assignment is done at what level? Header level. So when I say F5, yeah, it might have been assigned. So I got employee number as 8, employee name as something Raju, and employee designation, when I say F5, I got how much? Manager. So where this data assigned here? In the header. Body is still empty. If you see this body, if I double click on this, it is still blank. It is still blank. Okay. Forget about this 84 here. There is some internal width here. Don't get into those things. 3 indicates what here? 3 fields. How many records? 0 records. Right. Append t underscore emp1. What is that append statement will do? It copies the current record from the header, from the default header, to the end of the internal table. So at this stage, internal table is blank, doesn't have any records. So when the append is executed, when I say F5, see what happens. Yes, one record got appended. What is the count it is showing here? 1. It is showing the count as 1 here. And if you see this data here, yes, one record is appended. The server is slow, I think, or some connectivity issue. It's taking some time. Yeah, what is that I got here? 8 Raju and what? Manager. So what is the index of the index of the internal starts from what? 1. In the first position, I got 8 Raju and manager. Done. Next, what you are doing here? I want to append one more record. Na? So if you want to append one more record, we are first you have to put the data in the header. We have to put the data in the header. From header, you have to copy to what? Body. Okay, once again, yeah. Yeah, you can see here, I'm saying clear t underscore emp1. What this clear will do? Clears the header, na? So 8 Raju manager gets overwritten with the default values. When I say F5, see what happens. Yes, that 8 Raju manager got overwritten with the default data in the body still as it is. If I go to the body area, that 8 Raju manager is there in the body. It is cleared only the header part. Okay, so we are assigning that one more record to the header. 5 Vamshi employee. I'll say F5, F5, F5. So 5 Vamshi employee assigned to the header. Again, we are saying append. Na? Append will copy the data to the end of the internal table. Already we have one record. So it will go to the second record. When I say F5, yes, it might have appended. So I can see it. If you see t underscore emp, it is showing the count as 2. If I double click on this, see the data. How many cards are there? 2 records are there. Like this, record by record, we have to append. clear the data in the header, assign the data and append it. So like this, I'm not interested to debug rest of the lines. So where is the cursor at 24th line? I want to directly jump to somewhere to the 42nd line. So I'll put the breakpoint here. In the debugging mode also, I can put the breakpoint. I'll double click on the 42nd line. Done. Where is the cursor now? It is about to execute the 24th line. So if I say F5, again you have to execute step by step. I am not interested. So I'll say F8. F8, what it will do, it will jump to the next breakpoint if available. Yes, I gave the breakpoint in the debugging mode to the 42nd line. Directly control stops at 42nd line. In between, what are the statements are there? Those statement gets executed internally. My internal table has got how many records here? 2 records. So when I say F8, I'm saying F8 directly control has stopped at the 42nd line. So internally it might have exit till 40th line. So what is the count it is showing here? 5 records. So if you see T underscore EMP1, 5 records are appended. Okay, there are the 5 records in the body of the internal table. What is the record available in the header? 14 Ashok supervisor. So I'm trying to print it. So when I'm using write statement always refers to the header. What is the record in the header? 14 Ashok supervisor. So it might have printed what? The data and the header. So if you see the output in between miscellaneous display list, what I got? 14 Ashok Airwat supervisor. Now I'm interested to print the data from the body of the internal table now. So how do you print? I want all the records. I have to start from first record and continue till the last record. So I have to use loop and what? End loop. So F5. F5. So it is about to print the data in the body. So if you see the output generated so far, data in the internal table, I got that statement. Now I'm saying loop at a T underscore EMP1. What this loop will do, it will try to what? Start from the first record. What is the first record in the internal table body? Yes, what is the first record? 8 Raju manager. It will try to populate this record to the header. What is the current record in the header? 14 Ashok supervision. It will be overwritten with the populated record. So when I say F5, yes. What happened here? It is successfully populated. What is the record in the header now? 8 Raju manager. It has entered the loop. Why it has entered the loop? Because it has successfully transferred, copied, populated the data from body to header. So write statement always refers to the header. Na? What is the current record in the header? 8 Raju manager. And I say F5, it might have displayed that first record. So if you see the output in between, what I got? 8 Raju and what? Manager. Done. Okay. Since it is a looping statement, when I say F5, cursor again goes back to the 50th line. Acha, see the point here. What is the position here? Site ABX. We have a system field site ABX. We have a system field site ABX. What is the position it is showing? One, if you want, you can type it here. Site ABX. Where is the cursor in the body of the first position? So when I say F5, right? When I say loop here, it will jump to the second record now. So when I say F5, yes, what is the site ABX value here? 2. Means it might have populated the second record from body to header. What is the second record in the body? Yes, 5 Vamshi employee. Yes, it is successfully populated to the header. Like that will print F5. So it might have printed the second record. Miscellaneous display list. I got the second record. Again, when I say F5, control goes to the loop statement. When I say loop, it will go to the next record. Which record will populate? Third record. Yes. What happened here? I got the third record. Like that, it will iterate how many times? 5 times, because we are having overall 5 records. I am not interested to debug further. I'll say F8. Do you have further breakpoint? No. So the rest of the code gets executed internally. When I say F8, I got the rest of it. So this is a way to declare your internal table and fill your internal table manually. Any questions so far? Please ask.
Sir.
Yes, I.
In debugging mode, we saw 184 numbers, sir.
No, 84. Forget about that. We are not in a stage to understand. That is internal width calculation. Leave it.
Okay, sir.
Not required. Not at all required. Okay. actually just for information, not required at all, but again it will get deviated. So employee name I get as character of 20 na, inter will double it. How much? 40. This will be double. How much? 40 plus 40, 80. Integer occupies how many bytes? 4 bytes. So 40 plus 40 plus 8. How much? 84. For character it will double. For character it will double. For other data it will assign same thing. That is why it is showing it as 84. Understood? Double of this is 40. Double of this
Okay.
is 40. 40 plus 40, 80. Integer occupies what? 4 bytes. For numeric data, it will not double, it will consider the same. So it is internal width concept. So, but information I gave it. Okay, 84 is that one, the internal width. Yeah, apart from that, any other questions? Right? So what we have done so far is we created the types structure with the required fields. Based on the type structure, we declare two internal tables. One is with the default header, another is without any header. What we have done first, we have filled our first internal with the default header. So what is the process of filling? Assign the data to the header. From header, we have to copy to the body by using what? Append statement. Okay, so when I say F8, I got the data. Now what is my requirement is, I want to count the number of records in the internal table. I want to count the number of records in the internal table. Which internal table? First internal table. So see what I'll do. I'll say I'm having a statement like describe. Describe table T underscore EMP1. Describe table T underscore EMP1. What this describe statement will do? It will count the number of records in the internal table and stores that count value in a system field called as sci-tfl. So far we have seen some system fields like sci-datum, sci-UGIT, sci-rep-id, sci-uname, sci-page number, something like that. Okay. Similarly, or sci-subrc, I think we have covered somewhere. Sci-subrc we have covered. No, I might have not covered, but I covered sci-ucom, I think. Sci-ucom, function codes, sci-ucom I covered. Okay. So what this describe statement will do, it counts the number of records in the internal table and stores that count value in a system field called as sci-tfl. So immediately after describe, I'll try to refer to that system field. So I'll say number of records in what? Internal table. Internal table, what is that? T underscore EMP1. Internal table T underscore EMP1 is what? Sci tfl. So sci tfl and describe, you have to use one after the other. What this describe statement will do internally, it counts the number of records in the internal table and stores that count value in a system field called as sci tfl. So if you want to see that, you have to print it now. So I'm printing it. Let's see what is the output I'll get. So when I activate and execute, yes, what is that? I got number of records in the internal table T underscore EMP1 is what? 5. So how do you count the number of records in the internal table? Is you have to use what? Describe and sci-tfl combination. Otherwise, what I'll do? Let me declare one variable here. I'll declare one variable v underscore something count to type I. I'm declaring one integer variable count type I. I'll say I will use another syntax of describe. I'll say describe table T underscore EMP1 lines v underscore count. So what happens now? It will count the number of records in the internal table and stores that count value in our own variable what? V underscore count. Earlier, I have not used the lines addition. So to get that count, I should refer to the system field what? Sci-tfl. Now I want that count value within my program. I want to use it I want to store it in some variable so that I can use it for some purpose. So now I'll say Same output I'll get, but here the count value is stored in our variable. Number of records in so on. So is again what? What is the variable? V underscore some variable count. Both you'll get the output as 5 only. But what I'm trying, here also I got 5, here also I got 5. So what I'm trying to tell here is, I can use describe statement like this, or I can use like this. If I use like this, the count value will be captured in the system field what? Site field. If you see the documentation of describe statement, I'll put the cursor on describe, I'll press F1. I'll press F1. What is that? Describe table so on. So you can see here, one of the additions what? Lines. Lines. It is optional. It is there in what? It is there in what? What? Square brackets, no? Which indicates that it is optional. So if you see the information on these lines, what is saying? Determines the current number of table rows in the internal table. The return value as the type integer. In an inline declaration, a variable of type says the current number of rows of an internal table can also be defined using the predefined function word lines, which can be used in suitable operand positions. Acha, acha. Okay. Okay. So I got, this is one way of counting the number of records. Okay. I'll do one more thing. Observe this carefully. Clear v underscore count. Okay, I'm clearing the value of that v underscore count. So for your understanding, if I say write value of v underscore count is, I'll print, I'm clear, value of v underscore count is, I'm trying to print it just to confirm whether it got cleared or not, because earlier I used this v underscore count as part of lines addition. What is the value? I got 5. Now I'm saying clear. So when I say clear, it has to set it to default value 0. I should get na. So save it, check for the syntax error, execute. What is that? Value of v underscore count is 0. It got cleared. Understood? Now and now I'll say v underscore count equal to lines of t underscore emp1. Save it, check for the syntax error. Lines is unknown. Huh? Save it, check for the syntax, no errors. Okay, let me try to print it. Okay, so observe this. Again, I'm using the lines addition. So when I execute this, what I got? Value of v underscore count is 5. So what I'm trying to say is, to count the number of records in the internal table, I can use 100 different ways, means multiple ways. This is one way. If I use like this, it will store the count value in the system field what? Site field. If I use this syntax, it will store the count value in what? Our own variable. Okay, now I wanted I clear it just to show that as a 0 now. I can use this one. This syntax may not be supported in the older versions. So if it is not supported in your systems, don't get panic. Just leave it there. Use the old syntax. Am I clear? Okay, so save it, check for the syntax. So this is another way of counting the number of lines in the internal table. Okay, so that's what I use the lines addition. When I press F1 here, am I getting any documentation? I press F1 on the lines keyword. The table function lines, what is that? Returns the number of rows or lines in an internal table. Understood? So like this, we can count the number of records in the internal table. I'll do one thing. Okay. Yeah, I'll say once again, observe this carefully. Here I'll say number of records. Yeah. So here again, I'm clearing the data. Okay, I'm clearing the data. Again, what is that I'm clearing? V underscore count. Again, I should get back to 0. Na? I should get back to 0 when I execute. Yeah, what I got count value here? 0. Understood? Because I'm cleaning that value. Now what I'll do is, observe this carefully. I'll say, I will say lines of T underscore EMP2. I declared one more internal table in my program. Na? It is also internal table with the default without any header. It is also internal table without any header. At this stage, this internal is blank. Na? It doesn't have any data. So when I'm counting the records here, when I'm using that lines or describe table on this one, what is the count? I should get 0 only. Na? So number of records in internal T underscore EMPT is what? 0. When I execute F8, what happened here? Yes, number of records in internal T underscore EMP2 is what? 0. Understood? I got 0. Okay, fine. So EMP1 has got how many records? 5 records. EMP2 has got what? 0 records. Okay, my agenda is I want to copy the data from EMP1 to EMP2. Both are similar, na? Both the internal tables are created based on the same types of structure. So the structure of this internal table is same. When I say structure, both are having same field, same sequence, everything is same. Okay, so I'll say, what is the agenda here? I want to copy the data from EMP1 to EMP2. So I'll say T underscore EMP2 equal to T underscore EMP1. Clear? Let's see what happens. Let's see whether I'll get any syntax error. What is the difference here? T underscore EMP1 is an internal table with default header. EMP2 doesn't have any header, remember. So when I do syntax check, good. I got an error. What is the error I got? The type of T underscore EMP1 cannot be converted to the type of what? T underscore EMP2. It is giving me what? Syntax error. It is giving the syntax error. I'll say T underscore EMP2 equal to T underscore EMP1 body symbol. So here what will happen is, since I'm not using this symbol here, what will happen? It will refer to the header. Header will have only one record. Na? Here it is only with body. Na? So there is no meaning in copying from header to body. So here if I say like this, what is the meaning? We are telling SAP to copy the data from body of EMP1 to body. Here it is understood as body because it doesn't have any default header. So when I check it, no errors. No errors. Now I'll say, now I'll try to count. Okay, I'm trying to count number of records. Yeah, v underscore count equal to lines of t underscore emp2. Done. Save it. I should get that 5 records now. Yes, when I execute this, yes, how many records? Number of records in the internal table t underscore emp2 is what? 5. I got what? 5. Okay, done. I can do like this. I can do like this, or I can say t underscore emp2 like this. It should also support. Save it, check for the syntax, no errors. When I execute, yes, I got the same number of records in t underscore emp2 is 5. Am I clear? So why this is not supported is, here it will try to copy from header of this emp1 to the body of this, which is not compatible. That's the reason you have to copy it from body to body. If both are with header, this is absolutely fine. If both are with header, it would have copied by default from body to body. But this is with header and this is without header. That's the reason explicitly you have to select this. This symbol indicates what? Body. So when you have to use this symbol, when you're internally having with the when you're having with the default header, to refer to the body area, you have to use that symbol. Here I have not referred, so it is understood as what? Body only. Okay, so what is the number of records in t underscore emp2 at this stage? Yes, we are having what? 5 records. Any questions up to this point? Now, how many records are there in t underscore emp2 at this stage? At this stage, last 5 records. I want to print the data from that particular T underscore EMP2. How do you print the data? How do you print the data? By using what? Okay, I'll do one thing. Okay, at this stage we are having what? These many records. 5 records. Now I'll say, observe this carefully. Acha. So far what I was saying, when I say clear, here it is clearing the header part because this internally with the default header. Now I'll say, observe this carefully. I'll say clear T underscore EMP2. T underscore EMP2, does it have any default header? No, na. It doesn't have any div, it has got only the body. So this will clear body. This will clear the body. How do I confirm? Let me try to print it. Okay, again I'm counting number of records in internal table T underscore EMP2 after what? Clear. After clearing, again I'm trying to count. So uline, I'll say format color 2. So what this will do here? Sorry, what is the spelling? Color. Okay. So what this will do, since this internal table doesn't have default header, it clears the body. So when it clears the body, how many records are there? 5 records. Na? That 5 record gets cleared. Now when I'm counting, I should get again 0. Na? So when I execute, when I say F8, yes, what I got? Number of records in internal table T underscore EMP2 after clear is what? 0. So I got 0 records. Okay. I think even if you say like this, even if you say like this, both are same. Okay, I'm using that body symbol. Yes, what I got here 0. Okay, but I need not specify the body symbol because my internal table contains only what? Body, na? So you need not mention it. If you are in confusion, you mention it. Hope this is clear. Okay, even if I don't use this body symbol, it refers to body only because it doesn't have any default header. So we should be very careful when you are using the clear statement. When you are using the clear, when you are using the clear on the internal with the default, it clears the header. If you want to clear the body here, you mention what symbol. Here it makes sense. If I don't use it, it clears only the header. If I use like this, it clears what? Body. Okay, keep that in mind. So how many records are there in the T underscore EMP2 at this stage? How many records are there? Oh, not cleared. Huh? Achha, I have not commented both. No? Sorry. Okay, I have cleared it. So I should get 0 records. Yes, how many records are 0 records? Once again, I want to copy the data from EMP1 to EMP2. Earlier, I used this assignment operator. Na? Once again, I want to copy. So what I'll do here, I'll say append the lines of T underscore EMP1 to T underscore EMP2. How many lines are there in T underscore EMP1? Lines means records. How many are there? 5, na? So the 5 records will be copied. Let me try to print it again. Okay. Number of records in internal T underscore EMP2 after what? Append line. So 5 records are there. Those 5 records gets what? Appended. So when I say F8, yes, what I got? Number of records internal table after append line is at 5. Good. It got appended. Let me again try to clear the data. In T underscore EMP2, I want to clear the data. Earlier I cleared by using what? Clear statement. Now I'll say refresh T underscore EMP2. Refresh T underscore EMP2. Okay. Let me count it again. Number of records in internal table T underscore EMP2 after what? Refresh. After refresh. Done. Save it. Check for the syntax. Activate. Clear. Again I'm refreshing. Understood? Refresh also. So it should refresh all the records. So when I execute, what I got here? 0. So what is the point you have to understand? To clear the data from the body, I can use either clear statement or refresh statement. The difference between clear and refresh is On the internal table, there is no difference. But the clear statement can be used on any of the variables. It can be used on an individual variable, it can be used on a work area, or it can be used on an internal table. Whereas refresh can be used only on what? Internal table. I cannot use it on what? Work area. I cannot use it on a variable. It is only dedicated for what? Internal table. So how many records I got here? Yes, I got how many records at this stage? 0 record, because we have refreshed. Now once again I want to copy the data from EMP1 to EMP2, but I don't want all the records. I want to copy only from second record to fourth record. Only from second record to fourth record I want to copy. So what I'll do here, I'll say, observe this, append lines of T underscore EMP1 from 2 to 4. Already we know the index of the internal table starts from what? 1. So we are clearly saying to copy from what? Second record to fourth record after append lines from what? Second to fourth row. Okay, for your understanding, I'm doing this message from second to fourth row. Done. So again, I'm counting. So I should get the count as 3 only now, because I'm counting, I'm appending it from what? Second record to fourth record. What I got? I got only 3 records. Once again, I want to clear the data from T underscore EMP2. So far, we have used clear statement and what? Refresh statement. Now I'll say free. I'll say free T underscore EMP this thing. I'll say format color 6. Right? Free T underscore EMP2. Number of records in internal table T underscore EMP2 after what? Free. After free. Save it. Check for the syntax error. When I execute, what is the count I got now? 0. So what is the meaning? I can clear the data from the internal table by using clear statement, or by using refresh statement or free statement. The difference between refresh and free is refresh will only clear the data but doesn't deallocate the memory, whereas free will clear the data as well as gets the internal table to the initial state. When I say initial state, for example, you understand, initial state is how many records? 0 records. Initially there are 0 records. Okay, assume that I've appended some 10 records. Try to understand. So what this refresh will do, when I say refresh, it will refresh, it will destroy all that 10 records, but whatever the memory was there for the 10 records will be as it is. It doesn't deallocate the memory. Means data will be deleted, but memory is not deallocated. Memory is not deallocated. We cannot see that memory. Remember, memory is not deallocated. When I say free, what this will do, data will be deleted, and also gets internal table to what? Initial state. What was the initial state? There was no memory, na? 0 records. Am I clear? So efficient management of memory will be there in what? Free. Whereas refresh, what is the point in refresh is 10 records data will be, but memory is not deallocated. Means if I after a refresh, if I store 5 records, okay, rest of the 5 records memory will be wasted, na? Because memory is not deallocated. But whereas here it gets the internal table to what? The initial state. So efficient management of memory will be there for what? Free. We cannot see it physically. It is only the understanding that it gets the internal table to the initial state, whereas refresh will clear the data but doesn't deallocate the memory. That is the only difference. So there are 3 ways of clearing the data from the internal table, either by using clear statement, refresh, and free. What is the difference between clear and refresh? Clear can be used on any variable. It can be used on an individual variable, it can be used on a work area, or it can be used on an internal table. Whereas refresh and free are used only on what? Internal table. The difference between refresh and free is refresh only clears the data but doesn't deallocate the memory, whereas pre will deallocate the memory. Okay, so how many records are there in the internal table at this stage? Yes, we have what? Internal T underscore EMP2 has got 0 records. Now what I want is, observe this carefully. What I want is, I want to copy only managers from EMP1 to EMP2. I want to copy only managers from EMP1 to EMP2. I don't know how many managers are there. I may have 0 manager, 1 manager, or 1 lakh managers. So I don't know that. So what I'll do here, observe this. See this. I'll say loop at T underscore E. If I say like this, what it will do? It will loop all the records. Unnecessarily, I should not loop all the records. So I'll say where at the time of populating the data from body to header, I'll say where employee designation equal to what? Manager. Understood? So only those records will be populated to the header. Which records? Where the designation is manager. So that manager record will come and sit in the default header of EMP1. Now I'll say append T underscore EMP1 to what? T underscore EMP2. So what it will do? Appends data from what? Default header of what? EMP1 to EMP2 body. To EMP2 body. Okay, so save it, check for the syntax. It might have appended. It might have appended. I want to print it. I want to print the data from EMP2. See this careful. This is most important, the last one. So see here. How do you print the data from the internal level? You have to loop and display. So I'll say loop at T underscore EMP2 end loop. If I say like this, it will try to populate the data from body to the default header. Does this have default header here? No, EMP2 doesn't have any default header. It contains only the body. So this statement would give an error. Save it, check for the syntax. What is the error I got? In the 133rd line, internal table T underscore EMP2 has no header line. Internal table T underscore EMP2 has no header line. One of the additions into work area assigning reference into transporting no fields is required. So this is giving me what? Syntax error. Why syntax error? As T underscore EMP2 has no default header. So what I have to do here? I need to declare a separate work area which will act as a header. Last class we have seen how to create the work area based on the type structure. Based on the type structure, we know how to create the work area. Let me create somewhere here only. I'll create. I'll say data w underscore emp type what? Ty underscore emp. I declared a work area based on that. Now I'll say loop at t underscore emp2 into w underscore emp. I'll say right, print it from the explicit work area. Employee number. What is this? Employee name. What else? Employee designation. That's all. So save it, check for the syntax, no errors, execute this. Done. You can see it. I got only managers. No? Okay, so for your understanding, I'll give that message. So what is that? I'll say data in what? T underscore emp2 after copying what? Managers. So why I got the error here? Because the internal table doesn't have its own default header. So it is giving what? Error. So what I did is declared a separate work area which will act as a header. So what I did in this case, I took a separate work area. So this is my work area w underscore emp, which will act as what? Header now. This is your work area. What is this work area? W underscore what? EMP. Okay, same fields now. All are created based on the same type structure. EMP number, ename, and what? Employee designation. So what you are doing here? Here I said simply what? One second. Here I simply said loop at what? T underscore EMP1. Understood? This is what I have said here. Loop at T underscore EMP1. Okay. Here I have to say what? Loop at T underscore EMP1 into work area. Into work area. Like this. Each record is populated from body to what? Work area. Like this. So what is the statement I wrote here? Loop at T underscore EMP2 into what? W underscore EMP into W underscore EMP. Loop at T underscore EMP2 into W underscore EMP. So what is the understanding here? If the internal table doesn't have default header, we have to take a separate work area. This work area will act as what? Header. So we have to populate each record from body to header. So if you observe this T underscore EMP2, I got only what? Managers. Only managers. Why managers? Because what I'm doing here, when I'm looping that source internally, I'm looping only what? Those records where designation is what manager. What this statement will do, it will copy each record from body to header. Na? So from that header, we are copying it to the end of what? T underscore EMP2. Appends data from what? Default header of EMP1 to EMP2 bodies. For display purpose, I have to get each record from body to header. So since my internal table doesn't have default header, it is giving the error. So I took a separate work area. So this is how, these are some of the statements related to your internal table. So I'm done for today's session. Any questions, please ask.
Hello, sir. Rashmi here.
Yeah, Rashmi.
When we use these append lines, do we need to have same names for the columns in both the tables, like both the internal tables?
Yes, obviously. The structure, the field name, the sequence, everything should be same.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So to summarize, how do you count the number of records in the internal table? I can use what? Describe statement like this. Since I don't use any lines addition here, that count value is stored in the system field, site field. Here what happens? It will count the number of records, stores the count value in our own program variable. I can do like this, or I can simply use a lines function. Lines function. This may not be supported in the older versions. If you get syntax error, don't panic. Use the old syntax only. Okay. So they are the different ways of counting the number of records in the internal table. And what is the other point we are trying to understand? How do you copy the data from one internal table to another internal table? I can use assignment operator, right? I can use append lines like this. It will append all the lines, or from a specific to row to source index to target index, or if you want to copy the data based on a condition, you have to use loop with where. Loop with where only those records are populated, we can append that to what? Other internal table. And how do you clear the data from the internal table? Either clear statement, refresh statement, or free statement. Clear can be used on any variables, whereas refresh and free only on what? Internal tables. The difference between refresh and free is refresh deletes the data but doesn't get the internal to the initial state. Means there is no memory deallocation. Whereas in case of free, it deletes the data and gets the internal table to the initial state. So efficient memory management will be there in what? Free statement. And if the internal table is declared without default header, I cannot use the loop statement as it is. We have to take a separate work area. This work area will act as what? Header for that particular internal table. For this internal table, it has got its own header, default header. So it will directly copy the data to the default header. Here when I say like this, it will check for the default header. But this internal table is not associated with the default header. That's the reason I have to take a separate work area, separate structure, which will act as what? Header. and you have to use that header as part of my loop statement. Yeah, any questions please?